He'll be working with Joe Buck for Super Bowl 51 coming up on Fox. Looking good right now, looking clean, in shape, rested, ready to go. You look like you could play.
Yeah, I think I could. As a matter of fact, I say the way that these guys don't get hit, the way they did back when I played. I mean, come on.
Here we go. If you had the Dallas, now be honest, if you had the Dallas line this year, how many touchdown passes could you throw at your age right now?
Man, I don't know. The most I ever threw in a season was 23. Obviously it's a different game. I could play behind that offensive line. I know that. I think that, in fact, I was talking to Tom Brady about this when we met with him on Wednesday. Is the challenge for an older quarterback is the recovery. It's not your arm. You don't lose arm strength. You don't lose any of those types of things. It's taking the hits and then being able to come back the next week and do it all over again. And the remarkable thing about him is that he's not as sore as what most of us older quarterbacks were, and which is logical to some extent because they're not getting hit the way that I was or the other guys of my era were, and that's why I think we're going to see a lot of quarterbacks playing into their early 40s.
What's the hit that's still with you?
Well, the biggest hit that I took was actually my rookie year, and I was knocked out for about 10 minutes. And then that was the first really serious concussion that I had. And then the other one that was significant was in the NFC Championship game in '93 when I took what looked like a very minor hit and a helmet to my head. And I spent the night in the hospital. I had a few other concussions besides those two, but those were the two biggest hits I took.
Can you describe what that moment, that impact is? Or that, for those who have never experienced it, but we see it, we don't know what, and I don't know what a concussion symptom is. It feels like it's a concussion if you got concussion symptoms here.
Yeah, those two that I had, I don't recall anything about them. I mean, that's how serious they were. I have complete amnesia from the '93 championship game, and then the one I had in my rookie season, the guy got hit out of nowhere, and I don't recall the hit itself. But the other concussions that I had, Dan, were really, I say minor. I don't minimize head injury, but what I felt was just a little bit of a fog and a cloud where you were almost in a dreaming state and just weren't all there and present. But having said that, I never woke up the next day and had headaches or was sensitive to light. And this whole concussion protocol thing that I hear players struggling with, I never experienced any of that.
I thought here at the NFL Experience, it would be interesting for the fans to be able to understand what the baseline test is. Like have doctors.
I agree. I don't know what that is.
But explain it and just say, if you get concussed, this is what we do. If you get concussed, you feel this. This is what we're looking for. So almost be ahead of the curve, like the NFL saying, look, we're out in front of this. We're transparent. We're letting you understand what we're trying to understand as well.
Well, I think the league's made great steps, of course, and now there's an independent neurologist who's on the sidelines, and, they're not paid by the club, and I think that's been good. I do think the baseline testing has been great. I know the league has just come out and said that concussions are down this year from where they were a year ago. That wasn't always the case, even as they tried to make the game safer. But it's a physical game, and when you've got guys wearing helmets like that and you get hit in the head, you're going to have head injuries. It's just part of our sport.
How would you guys have done with social media?
I'd like to think quite well, but probably not so well.
You would have done well on social media, but how would it have impacted your team? You think you still would have had a dynasty?
Yeah. We still would have been great. We would have still, Micah would have still been running those square outs and square ins and catching the ball. And I think maybe the activity that was well documented with our team, I think that then is curtailed. I think players today have to be smarter. They have to be more aware. And I think that if social media existed back when I was playing, I think we would have been smarter about it. And who knows? Maybe we would have been more of a dynasty. Maybe we would. Everybody wants to know how many Super Bowls we would have won if Jimmy had stayed.
Yeah.
Maybe if social media had come about 15 or 20 years earlier, maybe that was what we were missing.
Do you know that Michael Irvin is still bothered by the '94 NFC title game when he drops the ball against Dion?
I don't know that he really dropped it. It was it probably should have been a pass interference call. Not an easy play for him to make.
He says that.
Yeah,
he said he didn't. It was PI on Dion.
Right.
Dion said, we watched it with Dion. He said, that's not. Show me the pass interference. And threw Dion forward there.
Right. But I don't know that we necessarily win the game if we get that call anyway. Right? Even if we make the catch or if we get the call, we never cut it to less than 10 points. Now, we would have made it a one-possession game, but they would have still been leading, regardless of whatever happened on that particular play. So, it's the game that I'm most proud of, and it's strange that I'm most proud of a game in which we lost. That was such a painful loss, but I wouldn't take anything away from what the 49ers accomplished that year.
He's Troy Aikman. He'll call the game with Joe Buck coming up this Sunday. But what was your moment where you said, you know what, I'm in this conversation with Favre or Montana or Marino?
What conversation's that?
Elite quarterback.
When did I realize that?
Yeah. You ever have a moment to yourself where you go, and I don't want you to be humble,
right?
But did you have that moment where you kind of went, I'm right there with these guys?
Well, I think it came. I think there's a validation period that takes place when you win your first Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Are you then in the conversation of Joe Montana and some of those type guys? No. Quite honestly, I don't think I've ever been in the conversation with Joe Montana. But then you win a second one, and then you start to think, okay, well, if someone wants to make an argument on my behalf as to being one of the best that ever played, 2 Super Bowls kind of put you in that conversation, so to speak. But, when you're a young guy, I'm sure you have those athletes and people that you look up to. And Joe was one of those guys for me. And so when I first really started following the game seriously and thought I might have a chance to play it professionally, Joe was at the top of the business, And so you don't ever feel like you measure up to the guys that you looked up to.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Basketball players look at Michael Jordan, but then Kobe probably looked at Jordan and said, I'm going to be better than you. LeBron is probably looking at Michael saying, I'm not that far away from you. You didn't feel like no matter you win 3, Joe's won 1 more than you, but you can't be in his category because he was the guy you looked up to.
Yeah, I think so. Bradshaw the same way, but for me, my whole, as my whole legacy became winning championships. And so when you start trying to put numbers up against other people's numbers, I think there's a tendency then to forget why it is we play the game, which was to win championships. And if in that context, I would put my career up against anybody who's ever played. But when you start getting beyond that and saying, well, yeah, but how many passing titles did you win? Then okay, well then maybe I ought to go over here and take a seat. That's just that's the way that it goes.
When we come back, I want to talk to Troy about, can Tom Brady be viewed as the greatest player of all time? Because we've had guys who said he's not a good enough athlete. Could he be the greatest quarterback? Yes. Greatest athlete, best football player of all time. So we'll talk to Troy. Also his conversation that he had with Tom Brady. We'll talk to him about that as we get ready for Super Bowl 51 here in Houston after this.
Hey, what do these guys do over here?
I don't know.
Huh?
I have no idea.
They get up, they run around, and they come back and sit down in front of their computers.
Yeah, Paulie.
It's like telemarketing going on over here. Right?
Kind of like your offensive line. We're anonymous.
No, he had Hall of Famers on his offensive line. He had Larry Allen.
You had Larry Allen on?
No, you had Larry Allen on your offensive line.
Yes, I did.
I don't have a Larry Allen here.
Which one's Larry Allen?
I don't have. Fritzy, just size-wise there.
That's right.
You guys were undersized,
Yeah.
Zone blocking.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
right.
We're like Denver Broncos, cut block there, whatever it takes. But speaking of Larry Allen, like guys would actually get sick before they play Larry Allen.
Yeah.
Larry Allen flu was that was real.
That was real. I mean, I wouldn't say it happened every week, but I think Larry was most dominant. We had some great offensive linemen, but Larry was the most dominant guy that I've ever seen. He when you watch Pop Warner and there's that big kid who's just dominating everybody.
Yeah.
You see that at that level, and then you see it at junior high, and then a little less in high school. You rarely see it in college, and then in pros you never see it. Well, Larry was that. He was doing at the NFL level what you see the big kid doing at the Pop Warner level. I mean, really remarkable.
I love the football life.
Thank
that
you.
The NFL Network did.
Thank you.
Because it gave depth to you, your father, where you grew up, when you moved. And I'm curious, would you have been a baseball player if you?
I would have. Yeah.
I
was a good
moving
player.
changed your life, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, I had some friends who went on to play Major League Baseball. Most of them went on to play collegiately. They played football, and I played football in California, but likely would have given it up in high school. And no doubt in my mind, I would have gone on to play baseball. I think I would have played collegiately. Whether I would have gone further than that is anybody's guess. But there's no doubt that moving to Oklahoma changed the course that I was on and ultimately allowed me to play football and have the career that I had professionally.
I mentioned Tom Brady is the greatest player of all time. Can he, let's say he wins.
Yeah.
Does he have to win to be the greatest football player of all time? Would you consider him?
Oh, I would consider him, sure. I absolutely would.
But Brandon Marshall said he's not a great athlete.
I don't think he's, I think the measurables of Tom is why he was drafted where he was drafted, but then that loses sight of why athletes are great. Athletes have a chance to be great because they can run really fast or they can throw the ball accurately, but they're not great because of those things. They're great because of the intangibles, and so that's what is lost when you're talking about some of the ways that these teams are evaluating players, and they want to do it through analytics, and you can't do that when it comes to people. And so with Tom, no one understood what he had within him. And two, let's be honest. If he goes to another team, does he have the same? He likely wouldn't have the same success he's currently having, but does he have still a Hall of Fame career? That's true for all of us. I don't know. He hit the right place at the right time, the right coach, and all that. But to say, is Tom a great athlete? No, I think he'd be the first to say he's not a great athlete, but he's a great player. He's a great competitor.
Could you beat him in a 40-yard dash right now?
Yes, I believe I could. I believe I could.
With the suit that you're wearing right now.
Yes, I think I could.
All right, fair enough.
I think he timed a 5 flat 40. I can run faster than that now. I think that's what he ran at the combine was 5 flat. And yes, I can run faster than that right now without even stretching, so but that's what I'm saying. I think to say, well, is he the greatest player of all time, and then dismiss, and say, no, he can't possibly be the greatest player of all time because he's not a great athlete. I don't think that's the question. He's not being asked, or I'm not being asked, is he the greatest athlete? I'm being asked, is he the greatest maybe football player of all time? And he's certainly in that conversation. The guy who immediately comes to everyone's mind when you ask that question is Jim Brown. And I think the fact that Jim Brown has withstood the test of time with all of the modern athletes and the great athletes and the way that they train and what they're able to do now, and yet unanimously, for the most part, when you ask anyone, who's the greatest football player that ever played, they say Jim Brown. I never saw Jim Brown play, but I think that speaks volumes to just how great Jim Brown was.
If you're facing Bill Belichick and he takes away your number one weapon, or at least we're led to believe that Julio Jones is going to be that guy. So as the quarterback, you're Matt Ryan. What is your approach of knowing that and knowing when he's going to do it on certain plays and other plays he's not?
Well, I think the first thing is how are they going to take him away? So I had Michael Irvin. Teams would want to take Michael away. So when they'd double him, sometimes they would double him, and because of the route or what we were doing, we were still able to throw him the football. They wouldn't double him all the time, and when they wouldn't double him, they knew that he was likely going to get the ball thrown in his direction. So I think part of it is how are they going to play him? This isn't new for the Atlanta Falcons. Every team that faces them doubles Julio Jones, and yet he's still, in my opinion, the best receiver in football. So can they take him away? And if they do, that's okay. They're weaker somewhere else. So I think it's a nice luxury for Matt Ryan to have, and that's why I think Thomas Dimitroff did such a good job, that if you have a quarterback like Matt Ryan or Tom Brady or any of the other great quarterbacks, you owe it to that guy to have good players around him. And they've done that, and that's why they've been able to score the number of points they have.
I also look at defensive backs now, and I don't know if we're adopting that Seattle philosophy of you're not going to call pass interference 7 times in a row.
Right.
So why not hold 7 times in a row, and you may call it 1 out of every 7 times? Can you understand that logic?
Yes.
If you're a defensive back, I mean, there's no rules that benefit you anymore. It's really hard to stop any of these guys, and it feels like Atlanta is built the way Seattle was built because of Dan Quinn.
I think the defensive backs in today's game have the hardest job in certainly football, outside of quarterback.
Okay.
You know, because they're having to run with some of the greatest athletes on the planet, and they don't know where they're going and what routes they're running, where they're going to break, and they're trying to run with them, and then at the same time trying to turn and find the ball and make plays on the ball. Oh no, yeah, you can't touch them, you know. So it's a real challenge for these defensive backs. I will also say that in addition to the challenge of saying, hey, they're not going to call pass interference 7 times in a row, I think they won't admit this, I don't think, but I think there's a reluctance for the officials to want to be a factor in the outcome of this game.
Yeah.
So the bigger the game, the more certain they want to be on every call. And I think that's why when you get into Super Bowls, they tend to let them play a little bit more. And I think that's good for both of these teams. You know, I don't think it's just a benefit for New England because, hey, Falcons, they got to contend with some of these receivers that the Patriots have as well. But I do think they're going to allow these guys to get a little more physical than maybe they would in a regular season game.
Is there a story about your Cowboys that I don't know? That I mean, I know there are stories, but is there a fun one if you left out names where just to give us an idea of what life must have been like for you when somebody comes in and tells you this story, and because you weren't included in the madness, were you?
No, I don't. I mean, I had my fun. I mean, I had fun.
Well, give me what was your fun? I know,
but I had fun within the laws of the land. You know, that's what you know.
You weren't going to get arrested,
right?
Okay,
right. And
did you ever go out with Michael Irvin?
No. No, we had much different interests. I've always said, though, I will say that there were so many things that happened, and not just in one little period of time. I mean, throughout my career, that if a movie was made, Jason Garrett and I used to laugh about this back when we were playing and said, if we made a movie and we did it just purely on facts, you know, and didn't, exaggerate anything that happened, people would not believe it. They'd say there's no way that happened. And I mean, yeah, I could tell you lots of stories that you would just be shocked. And I won't say who would be in most of those stories, but you can probably guess.
And you know who else? Charles Haley was crazy too.
He was great. He's crazy.
Yeah.
He's crazy.
Great.
But he's one of my all-time favorite teammates. Before we traded for him, I played in a charity basketball game in Northern California, and he was in this charity basketball game. And I really don't know why, Dan, but for whatever reason, he and I just hit it off. And I don't think he really liked most quarterbacks. I know that he and Joe Montana got along, but here I am on another team, and we just hit it off. I don't know if it's because I found him really funny and I laughed at all his jokes or whatever it was. And then before the start of that next season, all of a sudden we've traded for him. And from day one to right now, he's one of my closest friends and one of the people who I think the most of.
Good luck on Sunday.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
No, not nervous in that sense. I'm excited and honored, to be quite honest with you, that I get to call the game. But I hope for a great game. I mean, I did the game in New York a few years back.
Yeah.
That game was over at halftime.
Yeah,
yeah.
Can you tell Buck to shave? Can you?
I can.
Yeah, but he's not going to?
I think his wife likes it.
Oh, my God. Troy will be calling the game with Joe Buck, Super Bowl 51 on Fox. It's always great to see you. Thank you, Troy.
Thanks, Dan.
I appreciate it. We're back after this on The Dan Patrick Show.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.